Hello, everyone. Welcome to the teaching on Lesson 3, Herod and the King. Well, one day, shortly after the birth of their new baby, the mother had to go to do some errands, and so the proud papa stayed home to watch his wonderful new son. And soon after the mother left, the baby started to cry, and the father did everything he could think of to do, but the baby wouldn't stop crying. Well, finally, the dad got so worried, he decided to take the baby to the doctor. Well, after the doctor listened to the father, all that he had done to get the baby to stop crying, the doctor began to examine the baby's ears and chest and then down to the diaper area. When he undid the diaper, he found that the diaper was indeed full. Well, here's the problem, Doc says. He needs a change. Well, the father was very perplexed because the diaper package says it's good for 10 pounds. That'd be a 10-pound baby, okay? Just explaining that to the men out there. Okay, so here is the outline I'll be using for my talk today. Verses 1 to 12, the path of pilgrimage. Verses 13 to 18, the path of escape, and 19 to 23, the path of return. Okay, so this first section is so interesting. Wise men from the east following a star to Jerusalem, seeking one who has been born King of the Jews. And they get an audience with King Herod, King of the Jews. Well, this was Herod the Great we're talking about, called king by the Romans. He was a great builder. He built the fortress of Masada, Caesarea Maritime. This is where men actually developed a method of creating concrete underwater to create a breakwater for the harbor there. And, of course, the great Second Temple in Jerusalem. He was cruel and crafty. A ruthless murderer. He had his own wife and her 2 brothers killed because he suspected them of treason. He was married at least 9 times and sired numerous sons and illegitimate children. He even lived with his brother's wife, Herodias, and we'll get to that story later on. Now, you got to wonder about this meeting, going into the court of a paranoid king, asking about his successor. It's like waving a red flag in front of a bull. And this is a crafty bull. But as disturbed by this news he was, he knew enough to reach out to the Jewish leaders and ask them where the Christ was to be born. This is very interesting. He didn't ask where the King of the Jews was to be born. He asked, where is the Messiah to be born? Well, the Jewish leaders responded, in Bethlehem of Judea, and quoting the Old Testament prophet Micah to support their answer. Well, here again, as we will see throughout this study, Matthew is showing his readers how Jesus is fulfilling the prophecies pointing to the Messiah. But the religious leaders, in this case, just didn't get the connection. So Herod had a private meeting with the Magi, telling them to go to Bethlehem and search for the child and let him know where he is so he too can come and worship him. Well, the Magi didn't just fall off the turnip truck. They follow the star and find the child in Bethlehem, where they worshiped him and offer him gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Gold being a gift for royalty, frankincense a gift for a priest, and myrrh a gift for the dying. Well, next, God intervenes in a dream, exposing Herod's devious plot to kill Jesus and warns them to return to their country by another route. And in those days, as it probably is today, to disobey a king, especially a paranoid one, well, can be quite risky. So, nevertheless, they returned by another route, and they were clearly more awed by God than they were by Herod. Well, as it did for the Magi, finding Jesus may mean that your life must take a different direction too. I don't know about you, but finding Jesus in my life is not a one-and-done event. Yes, like you, I find him in the study of God's Word, but I also find him guiding my response to those I love and to those I have a lot of trouble loving. The path I take is influenced with each nudge of the Holy Spirit and conscience. So God directed the path of the wise men, and they let him do it. They were open to hearing him speak. Well, section 1 ended with a dream, and section 2 begins with one. As a reminder, Joseph's first dream took place in last week's lesson when the angel told him not to be afraid to take Mary as his wife because she has conceived by the Holy Spirit. And that was a direction changer, if there ever was one, finding Jesus in his wife's womb. Well, in verse 13, Matthew writes, when they, the Magi, had gone, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. Get up, take the child and his mother, and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for the Herod is going to search for the child and kill him. Well, God foresaw what Herod planned to do, and when he found out that Herod had been tricked by the wise men, and there was no way he was going to let harm come to his one and only son, Jesus. So just a couple of comments about Egypt at the time. Egypt we normally think of as the land of Pharaoh and Moses and the Hebrews in slavery and so on, but that was a thing of the past. In fact, there were Israelite conclaves there, and so it was not so surprising that Joseph was told to go there. The other thing about choosing Egypt is that this would ultimately fulfill Old Testament prophecy. This time the reference is from the book of Hosea, chapter 11, verse 1, out of Egypt I will call my son. The command to escape to Egypt was urgent. It was a matter of life and death. Well, during the hot summer of 2020, California seemed like it was on fire from one end of the state to the other. At one point it got so bad we could not see the sun for the smoke. That's a photo I took standing in my backyard looking east. Well, anyway, we lost power at our home along with great swaths of the community in the East Bay, and the winds were picking up and we could see helicopters fighting fire just over the ridge to the east. Our next door neighbors were packing up the car, getting ready to evacuate at a moment's notice, and my wife and I did the same. Were we to be called out of harm's way? Well, what a weird experience, I'll tell you. Deciding what to take and what to leave behind makes you choose what's most important. Well, our lives were at the top of the list, of course, and then came cell phones and computers and, well, maybe a change of clothes. I threw in the recent tax files, some water, and some snacks. Obviously not too well thought out, but okay. If we had gotten the order to evacuate, we would have been ready. Well, as the afternoon progressed and the winds died down, the fire got no closer. We were saved. Now, I can't say the same for the food in our freezer, as we went days without power. Now, as Jesus' legal father, he was responsible for his son's safety and well-being and that of his wife. And when Joseph got the evacuation order, he was ready, he was packed, and he didn't wait a minute. Divine guidance, answer to prayer, these come to us believers, and it helps if we're ready with receptive hearts to act on that guidance. The truth of the matter is, God will direct our path if we let him. Now, after Herod had died, and those who were looking to kill Jesus were also dead, Joseph had another dream. Get up and take the child and his mother to the land of Israel. Makes you wonder if Joseph got any sleep. So he got up, gathered the family, and went back to Israel. But when he learned that one of Herod's sons reigned there, he was afraid to go. Well, having been warned in a dream, what does that make now? 3 in this chapter and 1 before? I guess this is dream number 4 for Joseph. Well, okay, in this dream, the Lord directed his path to the district of Galilee, to a town called Nazareth. And so was fulfilled the saying, he will be called a Nazarene. The commentary does its usual good job of explaining this title and how it confused the religious leaders as to Jesus' identity. We'll get more into that later on in the study. Now, one of the things I try to do when I'm reading or studying the Bible, I ask myself, what is God trying to tell me? Now, you may be asking the same thing. What is John's teaching trying to tell you? But okay, several years back, I was just an innocent CVS core participant, minding my own business, working full-time and with not much time to spare. I attended when I was in town, and that was pretty much it, until a certain teaching director of our class appeared and asked me a loaded question. John, are you still traveling a lot for your work? Now, John Dewis didn't appear to me in a dream, but there was no ambiguity in his question. I knew exactly where this was headed, and I headed it off with, oh yes, I'm still traveling a lot, and in fact, I'll be gone for the next 2 weeks. Okay, now a year goes by, and John appears again, but with a different question. Have you ever considered leadership in CBS? He was chipping away. Now, I admitted that I had, but I had no time to do it justice. Nevertheless, I agreed to be a substitute corps leader, knowing I'd probably never be asked to sub in a corps because my attendance was so unreliable. Now, a year later, John Dewis appears for the 3rd time, just like the angel in chapter 3. Now I know how Joseph might have felt, and says, I'd like to ask our class area director to meet with you to talk about taking the teaching director position for our class. Well, as Sherlock Holmes would say, Watson, the game is up. Or afoot. My response was, doesn't a person need to be at least a corps leader for a while? I mean, a long while before they're considered for a calling like that? And he says, well, just talk with the area director and see what all is entailed. No obligation. Well, the following week, the area director appeared, and after going over the nuts and bolts of what was entailed, he asked me the question, will you pray about taking the teaching director position? And I will give you a call later in the week and follow up. Well, realizing I didn't have to commit to say yes or no right then and there, I eagerly said, yes, I'll pray about it. I got out of there unscathed. But then again, I had committed to pray about it. Now, mind you, this was early 2017. The company that employed me was in the middle of transforming itself from a decentralized organization to a centralized one. Back office functions were reorganized and downsized. Take my word for it, the cultural upheaval that crossed time zones and countries was staggering and stressful for the whole organization. Well, surrounded by these circumstances, I offered up a simple prayer. Lord, what do you want me to do? And he said, get up, take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Well, okay, not exactly. Although I did think about escaping. An angel did not appear to me in a dream either. However, it was the closest thing to it. I was led to consider how blessed I was. And in that light, I asked myself, how can I not say yes? And as they say, the rest is history. Well, this chapter of Matthew recounts the many times when God spoke to people personally. And that same Holy Spirit in which God communicated in Jesus' day still speaks to us. The personalized, this lesson paragraph on page 32 of your lesson book says, One of the main ways God speaks to us is through his word. And as you study the book of Matthew, you will benefit greatly from learning the facts of the Bible. I call that head knowledge. But you will benefit even more when you experience the Holy Spirit speaking to you personally through Scripture. Well, are you open to hearing him speak to you? Perhaps give you direction, vision, correction, or encouragement. God will direct your path if you let him. The wise men did. Joseph did. What about you? Okay, see you next week.